Welcome to the podcast powered by PFR's Founders Copilot, your AI-driven strategic partner for navigating this startup journey. I'm your host, Jeff Hewlett, and today we're sitting down with the incredible Jaeda Skye. Now, I have to admit, I kind of know Jaeda as Jaeda Cohen. I'm still getting used to the Skye thing, but it's all good. We're talking with Jaeda Skye. So we're stepping away from the data for a moment to dive into Jaeda's unique insights on going straight from college into the heart of a thriving startup. So let's go ahead and just jump right in. So Jaeda, just a real quick. So I got to know Jaeda. So a little bit about Jaeda. Jaeda and I both went to James Madison, and as you can tell, I graduated just a few decades before she did. But we got to know each other early on. She's in the content creation business. I have several clients in it. We kind of connected through that. But Jaeda and I have stayed in touch. We talk very regularly, and I love Jaeda's story. It's a fabulous story about going into college, not necessarily knowing exactly what the startup would be, but following it through, falling into it, and working through it. So I think what you're going to hear from Jaeda is she's not 100% exactly knowing where it is, but I can tell you she has momentum, she has focus, and she's going to share some of the key things he's really found as being helpful for her in the hopes that it could be helpful for you as well. So the great news about this is I think she's going to have some really great advice for you. The really cool thing too is Jaeda is unique, right? She's a unique person with a unique approach. I think though you're going to find lots of really cool stuff for you to take from what Jaeda's done that you can apply to your life as a startup, as an entrepreneur. So, Jade, if you could, just why don't you just start with just a little bit of your background and just sort of bring yourself into the conversation.
Hi, I am Jaeda. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast. This is super fun. So my name is Jaeda. If you happen to know me from social media, you would know me as Jaeda Skye, which, as Jeff was saying, Skye is my middle name and sounds good for social media. So I do a couple different things. I am a content creator, influencer on one side, and then I have a media agency on the other side, which is Jaeda Skye Media. So I do a little bit of honestly, the 360 of social media. So kind of everything when it comes to social media. I work with different brands on the influencer side, doing like brand partnerships, and different collaborations. And then on the media agency side, I work with a set list of clients doing anything from content creation to email marketing to consulting to social media audits, kind of anything and everything in the social media space. And then I also have an educational component to the media agency where I do different guest lectures, and I created a course teaching social media fundamentals and work with both individuals but then also universities to help deliver that kind of educational content. And then most recently, I started a mini kind of podcast series interviewing different people doing very interesting things about how they're navigating their life, and it's called Just Figuring It Out because everyone's just figuring it out. So I have my hands in a lot of different kind of buckets, but I'm excited to dive into our conversation.
Well, thank you so much, Jaeda. And that portfolio you just sort of rattled through is extraordinary, right? I would say just one of those things would certainly be a big thing, and you've managed. It sounds like you have a portfolio of basically 4 or 5 different things, if I heard that correctly. So maybe let's just start with sort of with that idea, meaning, one of the things that I talk to, entrepreneurs about is sort of this balance between focus, but also having a portfolio of alternatives, let's say, or businesses that where that not one of them may be the home run, but you sort of work it in a way that you know that one of them is probably going to take off as you bring it along. So, why don't we start with that? Like, how do you sort of keep your sanity of managing a pretty broad portfolio, and how do you feel like you're able to focus in individually to be able to give kind of the attention that you need to each one of those portfolio items?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of intersection between everything that I do, but I think each one kind of has a different purpose. So on the influencing content creation side, it's a little bit more creative, a little bit more candid, authentic, um, that kind of stuff. And honestly, I just really enjoy it. So it's kind of fun. But then so I started on the influencer content creation side when I was in college. And then the main reason I started the media agency was really two things. One was a little bit more consistency, and I've always been very entrepreneurial and love the entrepreneurial world. And with like influencing content creation stuff, I mean, one month you could have a great month and be like, this is awesome. Um, I can keep doing this forever. And then the next month be like, oh my gosh, I haven't done a lot of brand deals and this could be a problem if it keeps going at this rate. So I think I liked I compare it a lot to real estate. You know, if you're a real estate agent, you can sell $1 billion penthouse one month and sell nothing the next month. And it's very, up and down. So my idea with the agency was for a little bit more consistency and having, certain clients on a retainer or a certain, usually I do like 3 to 4 month contracts. So a little bit more consistency on that side and also adding in a little bit more of the entrepreneurial typical business kind of world. And then the other driver for creating the agency was to help students get hands-on opportunities. So where I went to school, there just wasn't a ton of hands-on opportunities unless you created them for yourself, which is what I was doing. And so by creating the agency, I could, work with the brand and then pull a college student and have them assist me or help teach them while giving them opportunities to build their portfolio and get more hands-on opportunities. So that was kind of part of the reason that was formed, and it kind of goes hand in hand because I was able to get a lot of my clients through my content creation influencing work. So people would find me from my social media presence, and then realize that they need something like that for their business. Or if I went to pitch a business, and they wanted, some kind of proof, but I could show them my social media presence and show them what I've built. So it's kind of like an online portfolio that I use to kind of validate, I guess, the agency work, which is really cool. It's a nice overlap combination. I actually just had a call with a potential client yesterday, and she found me through my personal Instagram. So
Wow.
that was kind of the definition of, how that works. And I kind of cross promote between the two. And then the other, kind of like the educational components and different content creation, consulting, all that kind of stuff. It kind of just goes hand in hand, with them doing, if you take like the 360 social media, I feel like each thing kind of hits a different point of the circle, which is nice. And for me, I like to be busy. I like doing a bunch of different things. And so I think part of the reason that I like doing it so much is it keeps every day interesting, which I really have very, very little, if any, burnout. I just love what I'm doing right now. And so I think, but part of that probably is because I've diversified what I'm doing. Um, and even within the industry, like I think some people are niched down into one specific thing, and there's definitely pros to that. A lot of people recommend doing that, but for me, I think it just exposes you to so many different people. And so I went from,
Right.
um, working with JMU Athletics, doing a lot of sports media content, then to Milan and Paris to go to Fashion Week and be immersed in the fashion world. And so, sports and
Right.
fashion, very opposite usually content pillars, but for me, having my hands in both, I think just makes it so much more interesting. And you learn so many things from, each niche that you can apply to other niches. And
Right.
I think it makes you stand out a little bit more too.
Yeah, no, I love that. And one of the things I really connected the dots on is how they're not like separate, disparate things. They all relate and they all relate very intentionally. And the way you just described that, that's where my head went, right? Like, oh, this is how Jaeda Skye Media relates to the Sky's the Limit course, relates to my my Instagram or my content creation. So anyway, so I love that because to me as a business person, I think of leverage, right? Like,
Yeah.
the more you can sort of relate common things, the better you're going to basically, it's almost like spreading costs. But anyway, no,
Yeah,
I
and I think
really
it also just
love
makes it a
that.
little bit more unique. I mean, I feel like my since college, I mean, I started in health science. My plan was to go into physical therapy, and so I that was my major, minor, physical therapy
Right.
in college. And then once I started doing the content creation, social media, I switched my major to this combination major and switched and combined the health with social media. And when I would explain that to people, they were so confused, and they were like, there's no way those two go together. That just doesn't go together. Like, the health
But
field,
you're
like,
like, oh yes, they do,
and I'm like,
right?
oh yeah,
Yeah.
no, it actually does. And so the
Yeah.
definition of that was after 1 year of one of my, can't remember if it was sophomore or junior year. But over the summer, the physical therapy place that I was, volunteering and shadowing at to be able to get hours for PT school, I switched over and convinced their founder to hire me as a content creator. And so I was their content creator, rotating their 12, now I think 13 different locations. And it was again, it was a sports focused PT place, so that's kind of how I got into sports. But I mean, the definition of how to marry, physical therapy, health with the social media, and it was like the perfect combination. And then I added a business minor when I was a senior also, and so that that just helps everything.
So, one of the things that I don't know, I'm just sort of swimming with all sorts of questions and thoughts about what you just said, which I think is amazing. One of the things that so when I connect to what we do at PFR, right, we have two very distinct verticals. We have the entrepreneur side, which this is all part of that, right, and helping entrepreneurs, the startups, etc. But we also have the financial education, decision-making financial education side, which they sound like two different things, but to your point, they're actually have a ton of overlap. But one of the things that I've found interesting, and because I know you have you have a very much have an education focus, being a guest lecturing and doing stuff like that. Now, for me, I'm a professor at JMU, so I have a full class. We do a bunch of a bunch of sort of related to guest lecturing, but we do basically 1 hour seminars for like the first gen kids or off campus life. I don't know, just different student organizations as well. But the one thing that I've noticed is that the educational segment, and I don't know, and I'm just curious if this is true for you, but for me, it's moved very slowly. Now, it moves, but it takes a commitment, right? And so we've been growing it, but I mean, I've been at this, so I've been teaching there for 3 years, but it's not like it all. I mean, I agreed to teach the class, which is great, but just being able to like get it at other universities and expand through other seminars, I always imagined it would just like go really, really quickly. And for me, at least, it hasn't. So I was just curious about just your experience on the in your education vertical, how that's gone, how you feel like you found success, if you're seeing any of the same things, like it's not going as fast or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that I think universities move typically at a snail pace. And so
I think
I
that's
think,
being generous too,
yeah,
to the snail.
I think to implement and to get a university to change something that they're currently doing, I found is very tough. And honestly, I mean, I recently got my course into James Madison University, and whether I realized it or not, I was working on that since freshman year, starting my social media, and then
Right.
junior year when I started to have the idea, slowly networking with the right people. And then, senior year, right after graduating, I actually built the course, and then going back to those people, and it was like passed off to the next person, and finally getting connected to the right person. And then they had to convince these people. And just, I think the social media world is just it's
Right.
so new
And it
compared
just
to
moves
any.
at a different pace,
It
right?
moves at a different pace, and as soon as you implement something, it's like all the rules change, or there's a new app, or there's a new
Yeah.
algorithm or something like that. And so I think for universities to keep up with it, um is, I mean, difficult from their perspective,
Yeah, they
because
probably
there's so
can't,
much
they
change.
can't, right? Like they
Yeah,
literally can't. They're not built to
they're not
like
built to do
respond
that.
that way. Yeah. Which
Right.
is
And so
probably a good thing, right? I mean, at some level it's like, well, we want them to be stable. We want them to serve 18 to 22-year-olds or whatever. So there's a part of me that totally gets it, but there's also a part of me that's like, oh my God, this feels like such a huge opportunity.
right, such a big opportunity, which is, I think, why I was able, especially like going to a school where not a lot of people did anything in the social media world. I think I just became very quickly the person that
Right.
everyone went to when they needed, a social media person to come in. So if there was a marketing class that maybe had normally they really spend a couple, a class period or two on a social media unit. I would get pulled into that. Or if
Right.
a, journalism class had something, I mean, a business class, really anything. I mean, anything social media can fit into. And there just wasn't a lot of components for that. So I think that's how I kind of, at least at school, became kind of like a big fish in a small pond, because they just,
Yeah.
there just wasn't a lot.
Right.
And
Well, the
so
good
I
news
think,
is, but Jada, the good news is they recognize it's kind of like, well, they recognize that, like, as obvious as this may seem, that social media is very meaningful. Right.
yes, yes.
So it's like, so there's somebody there that kind of gets, oh, this isn't like the 8-track tape. This is like actually something that is world changing. And if we don't like
Jump on it.
offer it in some way, we're gonna look like an idiot.
Yeah, you're kind of doing your students a disservice by not having,
Yeah.
some option. And even
Especially
like,
like you said, like in marketing and probably the entrepreneur, like, in the Gilliam Center and yeah, all that, so to me, there's some obvious places where, yeah, it makes sense. You should have somebody. And I guess the good news for you though is you're like, I mean, let's face it, Jay, I don't have no idea how old you are. Let's say you're 23 or 24.
I'm
You look, I know
23.
you're 23. So the fact that a 23-year-old can teach class at a major accredited university is, that's very special. Now, part of that is being in the right place at the right time. Part of that is because you're Jaeda Cohen and you're driven and you were able to figure it out at a very young age.
Yeah, I think it really is interesting. I think being 23 right now is such a asset for college students, because I mean, at least when I was in college, I was involved in a bunch of different things, but whenever people would come in to talk with us, or, you know, different advice, or a different speaker comes in, I think it's good to have a mixture of different, people at different stages of their life that are talking to
Yep.
you. But I think especially in, the social media world, it being so young and so fresh, I think
Right.
have as a college student, hearing from someone who is actually able to implement um different
Yeah.
things in the social media world so quickly, either through college and after college, I think it just makes you so much more relatable, and
Yeah.
it makes it seem attainable. If I was,
Hmm.
say 20, 30 years older, and I was going back and talking to them, and I was like, oh, this is like, I'm
Right.
I'm working on this. Even if you were at peak success, which I do not think I'm anywhere close to peak success right now, but like if you came back being like you're top of
Right.
success pyramid coming back in, I think as a college student sitting in a classroom, yeah, that seems really cool that you're able to go do all these things and work with these brands and go to these events and stuff. But
Right.
it would seem like, oh, this is so far out of my reach. Like this person took 20 years to do this.
Right.
But whereas me being, this is now my second year of post grad going back, and they're like, oh, this person is doing something. And
Yeah.
they're their second year post grad, like I am just a couple years older than
And,
them. And they're like,
right.
this can be me.
She looks like me. Right.
Yeah.
That's exactly. And it's funny you mentioned that because like in my class, you know, I don't look like them. I'm the white hair dude. And I do have tons of experience and I have all the stories and that's all good stuff. But I'm very careful to bring in the Jadas or the Hewlett
Yeah,
brothers
you want like
or
a combination
all,
of the two.
these. So, because they need to hear from, right. I mean, I am very blessed that I get to work with really young, successful people, right? And it's really cool. I mean, that's one of the reasons I love the Founders Copilot and all the stuff that I'm doing is really for that reason. I'm a very curious person, plus I love the energy. So I feel blessed. But I do think that that's totally a thing, right? Like it's one thing to hear from the grizzled veteran, but it's also another thing entirely to hear from somebody. Maybe they don't have it all 100% figured out, but you know what? They've got
I
a
mean, that's
lot
what makes it
figured out.
that's what makes it authentic, and I think that's what makes it relatable. I mean, I talk to people all the time about why, influencer marketing is so big right now. And I think, you could say if Taylor Swift was holding up, you know, whatever jewelry or soda or whatever, maybe she's getting paid to promote. A lot of people don't relate to her on like a personal level, and they idolize her, like they're looking up to her. Whereas I think a lot of influencers are, you seem like you're on the same level as someone, and you're trying to be
Right.
as relatable as possible. And so if you had an influencer holding that same piece of jewelry or the soda or the
Right.
whatever thing you're promoting and working with the
Right.
brand, it's like someone, the average everyday person scrolling on social media can see that
Right.
and see that and relate to it. And that's why I think it
Yeah.
translates, because they can see themselves with that
It
product. That's the
it is
same way with what I'm doing. I
yeah.
think
Well, it is an interesting thing, right? Because famous people promote products because the idea is I want to be as,
elevate.
as beautiful as Beyonce, let's say. I've just said that. But there's also a part of it that is, you're right. People, especially I feel like in today's world, Jada, is people want authenticity, right? They want to see a few blips. They don't want everything to be filtered through AI and have everything be, every perfect word and everybody look perfect all the time. They want to see a little bit of gaff here and there or oopsie here and there. They want to know that it's real. And
Yeah, and
and
a
I
lot of the
think
most
people are,
successful, a lot
yeah,
of the most successful, content creators and influencers right now are the people that you look at their content and you feel like you're FaceTiming with them, because
right.
it's so, authentic, and you feel like, people who do it really well are the ones that you feel like you're friends with them and you've never met them, which is very, parasocial and kind of weird to say, but when
Yeah,
content creators and influencers do what they're
right.
creating well and do what they're, trying to do well, that's the feeling that you get. And
Yeah.
I mean, I've experienced that
Oh yeah. Well, it's funny
all
you
the
mentioned
time.
the parasocial thing. That I find that whole like um weird sort of the I call it the fame imbalance, right? Like, somebody feels like they know you. Like, I work with other creators where people will come up onto them on the street and they honestly feel like they know them because they follow them, they're really connected to them, they engage with them on the, through messaging, all that stuff. And, of course, I'll talk to my clients and they're like, it's the weirdest thing in the world because, of course, I don't know them.
Yeah.
And, but the message is always, well, but you kind of do. And
Yeah.
and that's the deal, right? I mean, that's the way this weird thing about the whole parasocial thing, it just works. But you know what? You've got to really, it's not like you're faking it per se. You don't actually know them, but you appreciate them. And you can
Yeah.
have a really authentic conversation with them because they feel like they know you. And
Yeah.
their feeling is very real. And so anyway, so I don't know. I just think that whole thing is a very interesting thing. And I guess it's not new. I mean, people have been famous for a long time, but I feel like it's a bigger thing now just because more and more people are experiencing it as creators,
And it's more
right?
personal. Like you're able to see someone's entire life before social media and, the whole influencer world took off. I think, you anyone famous was, you were seeing a little blip on a magazine, or you're watching them in a TV show. You're not actually seeing as much of like their personality. It's like, oh,
Right.
their kitchen. Like there's big influencers that like you literally know what their kitchen looks like, what their
Right.
living room looks like, what their bedroom looks like. Whereas I think before social media, you weren't getting that insight. So it's so much easier to connect now, and just the level of content is just like the quantity is so much more than I think it ever was.
Right. Oh yeah. No, it's really wild. One of the conversations that I have regularly with some other creators too, and we've kind of talked about this before, the whole idea. So one of the things that I think is so cool about content creation in particular is that it has the feeling for a lot of creators like they're not just walking a road, they are literally building a road as they walk it, right? Like
Yeah.
it's not like this ad agency thing that TV ads have been around for 100 years or 50 years or whatever, where you're just sort of following this tried and true path that lots of people have walked. Like your age, your generation, the content creators that are doing what you are doing are literally building this industry as you speak, right? And talk a little bit about that. Like, do you ever think about it that way? Like, in other words, like it's sort of unsettling sometimes that there's not more like knowledge about how the whole thing works, but at the same time, that probably feels pretty cool because it gives you a lot of latitude to actually create something almost like in your own image or in the way that makes sense for you and your followers.
No, 100%. Sorry, my thing like froze the last part of your question, so I didn't get to hear it. But that
Yeah,
that
no
is like a
worries.
great thing to talk about it. So, and I was just talking. So with that podcast series I started, I was talking to Christina Tosi, who she's the founder of the Milk Bar. I was talking to her exactly about that because she was saying she's like you're taking a weed whacker and like whacking down the like path in front of you. And that's something my brother says all the time. Which we were having a whole conversation about that because it really is. It's you kind of just have to trial and error all the time. And I think the potential, the ceiling is so much higher. Like there really is no ceiling to what you can do with it, but it is an interesting um kind of choice to make, especially coming out of college, because in college, everything is much more structured. And I mean, I was doing it in college, so I was kind of getting a sense of what it's like. But there's a lot of people that are, come out of college and walk right into the career path. I mean, that was what I was going to do, into the physical therapy world. It was this, everything's laid out,
Right.
in front of you. I think what I'm doing now, though, there's just so much flexibility, and you kind of, you create your own sense of structure within
Right.
chaos. But I
Mhm.
just think I think with my personality type of, trying to do everything and everything, anything and everything, I guess, all the time, and adding different things, and, trying out different things. I think the creating your own path is just such an exciting time,
Yeah.
especially I'm now based in New York City, which is so fun. And there's so many people
I'm
here
imagining
creating their own path.
it's a little too fun sometimes, I would think. Just the pace, right? At some point, does it you ever get to the point where it's like, I would just really like to go to bed early tonight,
I made a joke to someone the other day. I said it's like sprinting a marathon all the time. Like you're just like sprinting
right?
this marathon constantly. But I will say, I think since moving here, I've honestly found a little bit of the opposite, which is funny. Because when I would visit New York, I think it was like I have to do this, 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 this. I have to get
Right.
coffee with this person, breakfast with this person, lunch with it, different thing every, trying to fit everything into some, long weekend or a couple of day period. I think now that I'm here, and I'm like, okay, I have an apartment, I signed my lease, I know I'm gonna be here for the,
Right.
foreseeable future. I feel like it's a little easier for me to balance a little bit.
Okay.
Again, I mean, I'm not the perfect example of
Yeah.
a work-life balance at all because,
Yeah. Yeah.
my work is my life, my life is it's
Right.
very, very both. And so I think, if you want a better work-life balance, I think New York doesn't quite encourage
Yeah.
that. Um, but
No.
but
Okay.
for someone like me,
But
I think,
but to your point, living in New York is
yeah,
better than visiting New York in a
yeah, I
way.
think
And
it's easier to take us. Yeah,
it's funny you mentioned that. I've had the same experience. So I've lived all over, but we've lived in DC for a long time, and I've always had an office in New York. And so my habit was often, get on the Excel on Tuesday, hop up, be there till Thursday, Friday, get on the Excel, come back. And so, but I'm glad to hear you say that because my experience was always, well, when I'm in New York, I just got to go, and I would go, and I would go
I mean
hard.
that's what I was
And I
nervous
kind of
about.
created this like almost like a bad relationship with New York, like almost
Yeah,
like saying, this isn't like I'm glad to be there and I'm
not
glad to
sustainable.
leave. But
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying is, well, once you're there, it's actually there's a way to like make it work better versus feeling like you're always constantly putting 10 pounds into a 5 pound bag.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, that was my biggest concern with moving to New York, honestly, was I was just worried that, like there were too many potential opportunities, and I think I was worried that it was going to stress myself out of like
Right.
I can't take all the opportunities all the time. Like that's just not sustainable for a weekend or for, a couple of days. I'm like, yeah, I just pack everything in. But living here, I'm like, I just don't know how that's going to be, possible, and how I'm going to be able to like say no to certain things. But then being here, you're like, okay, well, like there will be something tomorrow, there'll be something the next day, and like you're
Right.
you're always missing out on something. Like at some point you just have to accept you're always going to miss out on something. If you're not
Right.
walking inside right now, like there could be something going on really cool right now, and I'm choosing to do this instead of being outside. But that's
Right.
like you just have to
Yeah.
choose, pick and choose sometimes,
Yeah. Yeah.
certain
Oh, I
things.
know.
Yeah.
I'm a
And luckily with
geeky economist. So I think about opportunity cost, right? Right.
oh my,
But I
yeah.
also think about you're in a high opportunity serendipity environment, right? Like
Yeah.
almost like you don't always know what good thing's going to happen, but you know that there's a higher probability
Yeah.
of something good happening. And to me, that's serendipity, right? And that's sort of managed serendipity, like saying serendipity you think of as being completely random. Well, actually, intentionally moving to New York and putting yourself in position, like you don't always know what the good thing is, but it's more likely to happen. And to me, that's like this whole weird planned serendipity thing that, I talk a lot about with my
Yeah, no,
clients as
I
well,
I
right?
love the word serendipity. I feel like I think about that all the time, and I think that it is like part of the reason moving to New York. I mean, I think that's what I've been here a couple months now, and I feel like just if you have the personality type to just put yourself out there and try different things, and the things that you're going to run into in New York is so much different than a lot of other places in New York, and the people that you just happen to bump into getting coffee or standing next to at an event are just a different kind of person than you find in a lot of other parts of the US and the world. And I think people here have you have to want to be here. And so I think people are very driven.
Yeah,
Like New York is a very hard place to make it work. And everything's a production. They make it very hard to live here. And so I think if you are living here and you're doing well living here, I think it
hmm
just takes a certain kind of person to be here. And so I think it helps with those connections. I
right.
think there's components of being lonely in a city kind of thing, which is a whole other discussion. But I think if you're putting yourself out there and you're going to different things, I think
Right.
the people that you're meeting are just unlike any other place in the world.
Wow, that is so true. It's funny you mentioned being lonely in a city. One of the things I talk to my creators and clients about sometimes is that entrepreneurship's a weird thing. Like you might have a ton of clients and you work with people all the time, but working in your business with clients, with this, with that, is a completely different thing than working on your business, kind of above it. And as interactive as it is working in your business, is as lonely as it can be when you're working on your business because you're like the only owner and you're the one who's making the shots. And I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that. Like, do you see that at all? One, and then two, how do you kind of manage that, like creating a network or otherwise connecting with people that you can talk to about like working on your business?
Yeah, I think that's something that I've always, I guess, struggled with. I think coming to New York was kind of I mean, one of the ideas, I guess, coming to New York was to help solve that and be around people, with similar mindsets. I feel like most of my life I haven't been surrounded by people with like those similar entrepreneurial, thoughts. And it definitely is, you're not with the city, you're not going into an office every day all the time. And I think that's why, I mean, I'm a big advocate for just kind of like talking to strangers, go up to someone and introduce yourself and say, hey, especially,
Right,
in the right, obviously there's right and wrong ways to do that. But
right.
I mean, I like my neighbors in my building who I'm now friends with. It was because one of the first days I moved in, I would like hear these people talking. I was like, you kind of know when there's people like around your
Right,
age.
right.
And so I
Yeah.
knocked on these girls' door and I was just like, hey, I moved in like down the hall. Like you guys just seem fun. Like I wanted to see if you wanted to chat. And they were like, oh my gosh, like come on in. Now we're good friends. Like literally just from knocking
Aw,
on these random people's door, which
right.
obviously
I love
you have to be
that.
careful about that.
Yeah.
But
Well, being a young lady,
yes,
maybe us
yes.
guys don't think as much about that, but in New York,
But
I would, if I was your dad, I would be like, So,
right.
yeah,
So I think like, there's so much opportunity though to connect with, similar minded people, especially being here. And so I think the way that there's no influencer office. I mean, like the
right,
street and coffee shops and, stores and events, like those are the offices of, influencers, content
right.
creators, entrepreneurs. And so I think starting to, talk to strangers really in the right
hmm
way, um, I think is something that's really beneficial. And I think is kind of the reason I'm here too, because a lot of the
Yeah,
people, you're walking around on a random Thursday afternoon and, like they're not in an office also. So it's like, what are
right,
they doing where they're not in an office? So
right.
I think there's a lot more potential for meeting those kind of people here. But it is it is like a little bit lonely in a crowd kind of situation with, working with clients, but
Right.
you're not seeing the same people every day. And so it's harder to build, those long-term relationships. You have to be much more intentional. So there's a lot of intentional,
Yeah.
grabbing coffee,
Yeah.
going for a walk. Like you have to set things up very intentionally. Whereas if you were going into
Right.
an office and you're just forced to, see your coworkers every day, and a friendship comes with that because you're seeing them. Um, so I think that's definitely something I'm working on a little bit more here. And,
Right.
after being here for a little while, it's nice. It's like the people that I've gotten coffee with or gone for walks recently, it's like people that I've already hung out with a couple times, which is nice. And so you're building on the
Right.
relationship.
So I want to, if I could, I want to start wrapping up here, and but I wanted, and this has been amazing, by the way. Thank you so much. I knew this was going to be an awesome interview and discussion, and it has been. And I can't wait for another one, actually. So one of the things I wanted to talk to you a little bit about, and this is going to be where you get a chance to, give a little advice. But so when I listen to you, like I'm a kind of a nature nurture weird thinker. Like, is entrepreneurship, are you born an entrepreneur? Can you develop it into an entrepreneur? You strike me as somebody who was kind of born an entrepreneur, but I also have a belief that entrepreneurs can absolutely be made. But depending on who you are, it may be harder to make it made versus not or whatever. And perhaps you were blessed with a personality where it was obvious to you early on that that was the route you wanted to go. But talk a little bit about if you're somebody, maybe, you're 23, so maybe they're still in college, they're 20, 21, they're very interested in this space. They think they want to try entrepreneurship or content creation, but they're a little bit worried. Like what advice would you give them?
I mean, I'd say especially when you're in college, try everything out and take advantage of kind of the college bubble that you're in to try things out. Obviously that advice is catered to, college kids and people in college right now, but I think especially, when I was in college doing stuff with sports media was great because I don't know if I would have tried that outside. Like I don't think it would have occurred to me that I really liked the sports world so much. And even, even now, like I'm looking to work with some more, sports clients or individual athletes or teams and stuff like that because I just miss doing it in school and I want to do it more. But I learned that I like doing that by just trying it out at school. And I studied abroad in London and did an internship at a fashion PR firm, which I mean, great experience, but I realized that there were aspects of it that I didn't love, and I like being a little bit more, hands-on in front of the camera as well as behind the camera, and that was a little bit more just, behind a computer. Where some people are like, oh, I just want to be behind a computer doing that, and I don't want like the human interaction as much. And so I think I learned all these things just by trial and error and trying new things. And so I'd say just try things that you think that you're interested, even if you don't think you're interested, like try it off, try it again to like confirm that you're not interested in it. I think, college is the perfect place to fail. And failing fast and failing forward. Like if you don't like something, it's like, okay, check that off as you're not interested in it and move on to something else. And so I think what you were saying with the nature versus nurture of entrepreneurship, I think most people really do have it in them. I think different people have different strengths. And so maybe playing into something that highlights your strengths, or, I had my own little side businesses growing up, and even in like elementary school, I had little businesses and I did it with one of my friends, and she had a different skill set than I did. And so I think finding someone that balances that is always beneficial, especially, if you want to start some kind of business and you're like, I need, this kind of person to help me, like maybe that's a good spot for a partnership. And, bringing in the right people. I mean, even with my business, there are certain things that I'm like, I'm not the best at this, so I'm gonna bring this person in and have they be my person for this, or this person's really good at this, so they're gonna be my go-to person for that. Um, I think some people have a little bit more of like that natural like people management kind of skills and the motivation kind of component. I think there is a lot that you can learn, but I think it also is smart to realize what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are, and either if you want to fill the weaknesses in with another person, or now with like AI and all that kind of stuff, there's probably a lot of opportunities there. Or if you want to work on those weaknesses and turn them into strengths. But I think right now, especially, your question was a little bit targeted to people in college. I think when you're in college, like you might not know what your strengths and weaknesses are
Right.
or recognize them. And so I think just trying out different things and having that idea in the back of your head of figuring out what those strengths and weaknesses are is a really smart thing to do while you're in college and while you have kind of the bubble to fail in.
Yeah. Oh, that's incredible. So we've been talking with the amazing Jaeda Skye. And our podcast, powered by PFR's Founders Copilot, is your AI-driven strategic partner to navigate the startup journey. So, Jaeda, this has been amazing. If folks want to connect with you, what's the best way for them to either see you on socials or to otherwise DM you?
Is my social media is Jaeda_Skye. And then my website is jaedaskye.com. But I'm always happy to chat with people via DM, email, text. Just shoot me a message on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, any of them, or through my website, and would love to connect with anyone.
Well, and that's great. And I do hope we have a chance to talk again in the future. So thank you very much, Jaeda.
Of course, thank you.